The Accidental Entrepreneur is brought to you with the help of our sponsor, Weber, the world's leading small business email marketing automation service provider. Since 1998, Weber has helped more than 1 million small businesses and entrepreneurs through its suite of web-based email marketing, automation tools, and education. Weber, the best option when it comes to marketing your business. The podcast is also brought to you by the Alternative Board. Since 1989, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has been one of the leading peer advisory and business coaching organizations for independent business owners and CEOs across the world. By facilitating peer advisory boards, private one-on-one coaching, and strategic planning services, TAB helps business owners improve their businesses in ways that change their lives. And be sure to connect with our affiliate sponsor, GSM Growth Agency. They're boosting e-commerce businesses to 6 and 7 figures in revenue and cover everything from ads and social media influencers to making your website better. GSM Growth Agency focuses on taking businesses from startup success to bigger success, going above and beyond to make sure growth sticks around. They're all about cool ideas, lasting partnerships, and making your mark in the e-commerce world. And be sure to support the podcast by ordering some logo merchandise from our online store. Listen to all of our sponsors' commercials later in this episode and follow their links in the show notes to learn more about their products and services. All right, welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm Mitch Beinecker, your host, so thanks for tuning in, making good content. Again, it's now 2025. My new friend Scott is our second guest. We had one this morning, come out in a couple of months. You'll be listening to it probably, in April. If you are listening on your favorite directory, you can leave us a 5-star review. Please do so. If you're watching us on YouTube, then subscribe to the channel, like us, and keep us connecting with cool people like Scott. So let's get on with today's show.
The information provided in these episodes is for entertainment purposes only. It is not a guarantee of success or to be construed as advice of any kind. You should always seek advice from local licensed professionals before making any decisions.
The dictionary defines an entrepreneur as a person who organizes and manages any enterprise, especially a business, usually with considerable initiative and risk. People often start a business without much choice, perhaps due to a job loss or just being dissatisfied at work, and they come up with an idea they just know can be successful. They become entrepreneurs by accident. That is to say, their success or failure happens by accident, not with intention. My name is Mitch Beinecker. I'm a corporate attorney and a business advisor. You're listening to The Accidental Entrepreneur, my podcast about how to achieve success on purpose, not by accident. Join me along with our monthly guests where we share our knowledge and help you get a hold of your business. And now on to today's episode. All right, Scott, so thanks for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Going into my 6th year, so we keep doing good episodes and good interviews and sharing good ideas. So today we're going to talk about you and your background in business, but also a lot of the coaching that you're doing. Because I have a lot of discussions with different types of coaches for different reasons, and I think business owners need that stuff, and it's a good way to start the year. So the other episode was on scaling and a scaling business, so it's a little bit different. So it's all good. So why don't we start back with you as to where where you got educated, where you maybe you learned it in the streets, maybe you learned it in college. Everybody learns it differently, and what you did in business. Then we could talk about in the second half about all the coaching.
Sure. So yeah, I actually, my father was a small business owner growing up. He ran a catalog Sears store, CSMs is what they called them, catalog sales merchants, in a small town where my mother was a principal there. My sister and I were in school there, growing up there. And of course, I kind of got started seeing what small business was like by observing my dad running his own business.
Sure.
He'd done a lot of other things before that, but that was, the bulk of my middle school years on into high school. That's what he was doing. So that's kind of really where most of what I remember. So I always kind of had an entrepreneurial spirit. I started my first business when I was 12 years old. I live in South Texas. Okay. So I started painting people's offices for them, like the outsides of the offices. And of course, it's like 2,000 degrees in South Texas in the summertime when you're out there painting.
Outdoor painting.
Yeah, outdoor. And I figured out real quick, like, this is miserable. So I went and hired all of my friends.
Yeah.
So I would go line up all the jobs and I would bid out the materials and I would bid out the job, but then I'd pay my friends,
Yeah.
kind of on the cheap to actually do the labor,
The way it works, right?
So I turned it into a business, even at 12 years old. It was really actually a business. I did lawn care business for a while. I did this, I did that. Of course, I worked for my dad too in the summer times and did all of that.
Right.
I went to school. I actually was going to be a medical researcher. So I have a couple of hard science degrees, not business school, none of that stuff. But I always still had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit on the side. I pivoted. I got out of research work pretty quickly because turns out doing research work is really about chasing grant money.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to spend all my time chasing money. So I'm like, okay, let me do something different. So I became a school teacher, did that for 16 years. Then went into the corporate world, did that for 11 years, worked myself up into senior leadership, kind of one of those high end, high six-figure kind of jobs, flying all over the country, a lot of time working with clients and seeing a lot of hotel rooms at airports.
Were the things related, like what you taught in school and the grades?
It was education related, yeah. So I taught science in school, and then I went into the educational testing industry. So in the words of my students, I joined the dark side. Right. Because I went from teaching to testing. So
all those companies that make all this money of these tests where the parents are like, why are we doing this?
Exactly. All those tests that everybody hates. Right. Well, yeah, I wrote those. Did all of that. And but at the same time, I kind of still had that entrepreneurial bug. So even when I was a school teacher, even when I was in corporate, I was doing different things, on the side, just kind of side hustle, small business, doing different things. And eventually,
what the things you were doing?
I did, eventually I did the coaching business, but when I started out, I was doing things like, again, like in the summertime, I would run a business. Like, again, I did lawn care for a while.
Right.
I did other sorts of kind of go in and do, handyman kind of work. So I did a lot of, manual labor, construction kinds of stuff, mainly because that's something that you can kind of pick up and put down.
Right.
It's on demand. When you put your shingle up, you got jobs. When you take your shingle down, the jobs go away.
Right.
And since I was a full-time school teacher working in full-time corporate, I kind of had to do it around that.
Got it.
And by the time I got into corporate is when I actually started the coaching. And again, that was part of the reason I started the coaching is because I could do it from anywhere.
Right.
This was the days of Skype, but Zoom and this sort of technology. So I was in a hotel room in California one week meeting with a client that evening, and then, in Maryland the week after meeting with a different client, and that doing all of that sort of some work remote. So
what was the connection between what you were doing in corporate? Because corporate, you said you were writing or selling, or I don't know, whatever you're doing.
I was writing tests is literally what I was doing. And eventually I was leading a team of people that were writing tests. But the interesting thing is I actually look at the work I did as a school teacher and the work I did in corporate as actually really good work for the skills side of coaching, getting better at the skills of coaching. Because my approach as a school teacher, I was never that teacher that stood at the front of the room and said, okay, do the assignment at the back of the book. I was much more the Socratic, engage the kids, ask them questions, make them think. For one thing, I was a science teacher, so that kind of lends itself to that.
Of course.
But then the other reasons, that's just my style. And then when I was in corporate, as I was developing leaders and even working with clients, again, I had that's one of the reasons I think I got promoted relatively quickly is because I always went in with the idea of, I don't want to be the smartest guy in the room. I don't want to be the guy that knows all the answers.
Right. I
want to be the guy that pulls the team together and then kind of asks the right questions and gets out of the way. It's just figure it out,
Right.
And that was always, to me, that was like success, where a lot of the leaders that were in the company, figured that they needed to be the person that had all the answers. I was like, no, I need to be the person that has the right questions.
Right. Well, I think that's the difference between a leader and a dictator. If you're calling yourself a leader, but you're just dictating everything, you're not really leading people to do things, that's not
right.
But you're right. A lot of people make that mistake and they feel, I don't know, from an ego standpoint, obligated to be the smartest person in the room, whatever.
And oftentimes that's what got them promoted is, they were, they were good at the skills. They were good at the job. They knew the right answers. They could get things done. And so they get promoted and eventually they get promoted right out of their skill set. And now
like salespeople, right? If you were the best salesperson in the company, what they're going to do is they're going to take you out of sales. So they'll stop making money off of you and start you teaching because they think in their infinite wisdom that somehow you can transfer the skills that you have
Right.
innately to these other people, and it's usually not the case.
And usually it's a completely different skill set,
Right, of
and
course.
you ended up promoting the person right out of their comfort zone,
Yeah.
and guess what happens? They either get fired or they
Right.
quit because they burn out on it because it's not fun
Right.
anymore.
Okay.
Um,
So
so yeah, I
sounds to
kind
me
of
like,
did that.
and it sounds to
Mhm.
me like through the teaching and maybe a little bit of the corporate stuff, but less there, you had the skills to do coaching, right? Because
Mhm.
coaching is really just kind of like getting people to do things that they're not being self-obedient about and stuff like that, right?
Well, a lot of
Motivating
coaching to
them,
me is that
guiding
ability
them.
to ask the right questions.
Right.
It's I jokingly tell people part of my job as a coach is to help you realize stuff that you actually already knew, but you weren't really aware of it
Right.
consciously.
Yeah.
Once you say it out loud, you're like, well, that's obvious. It's like, well, yeah, but why weren't you doing
Well,
it?
they have no
So
accountability person. Nobody's holding them accountable for anything, right?
yeah, there's no accountability. There's often just having that ability to articulate something and say something out loud. Because you and I both know it. If I say out loud to you, hey, Mitch, I'm going to be there at 2, well, then I'm probably going to be there at 2,
You're
or at
not
least
gonna
I'm going
look
to feel guilty if I'm
right.
not.
Of course. Right.
But if on the other hand, it's kind of in my own head, I'll get it
I'll
done
see
by
you this
2.
afternoon. Right. Whatever.
Who
Yeah.
cares?
No,
If it's
there's
3
no
o'clock, who
accountability.
cares?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So how did you start the coaching business? Like, so I interviewed a lot of coaches, right? I've talked to all kinds of consultants. You can put them in a big pot and mix them all up, but let's assume they're people that are helping other people to
Mhm.
be successful in whatever it is that they do. A lot of times it's people that are doing something, right, or being successful at it, and a colleague or friend who says, hey, Scott, can you teach me that? Like,
Right.
I'm struggling in my business, and it just kind of comes together, and it doesn't sound like that was the road you went on. So how did you?
Yes and no.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so
so
on the side, while all of this was going on, my wife and I had actually gone through our own personal journey that actually started around the area of finance and
okay.
getting out of debt. And, I was actually suicidal because of a
Mm,
great deal of debt we had. My
yeah,
wife and I nearly divorced over debt.
yeah,
And
a
it
lot of
was
people
that
do.
area that people looked at me and said, hey, y'all are doing something weird. Can you show me how you do it? And we actually started it kind of doing it as ministry work, doing it through church and, nonprofit and that kind
Right,
of thing. And then real quickly, I'm like, wait a minute, I could turn this into a business too.
right.
And so it started just in the financial realm, and it really wasn't focused on
Uh,
business owners. It was focused on personal finance. But then what I discovered is a lot of the people that were attracted to me were also, they were trying to do something on the side. They had this area that they were doing this, but they really thought they should be doing that, this
right.
other thing over there. And they couldn't get from here to there. And they thought money was holding them back. And so we started working in that area. And then as I kind of added to that, I found the areas of time, productivity was also an area that people felt like was the thing holding them back. I'd start my business, but I don't have enough money, or
Right,
I'd start my business, but I don't have enough time.
right. But both those things are lost. They're what do you call those? I forget the word, but they're not correct, is what you're saying, right?
Well,
It's
yeah, they're the symptom.
yeah, right.
You know?
Like they think it's money going to solve the problem.
Right.
They get a lot of money and they still have the problem. They're like,
Right. And that's why I joke and say, I tell people I help with time, talent, and treasures. I really only work on talent because at the end of the day, the way you handle your money, the way you handle your time is really about how you handle yourself.
okay,
So it's really much more that self-focused on mindset, limiting beliefs, behavior, accountability, all of those things. Usually if you can get those right, now all of a sudden it's like, oh, the money stuff's easy now.
right.
Because it's not a math problem. I mean, when you think about time and money, it's not math.
No,
It's not that. It's
right,
the what am I doing with it that actually holds you back. And so that was over time. It kind of evolved from personal finance, which was what people, that was kind of the accidental part where people were just kind of asking for help. But then
right,
I very deliberately pivoted and said, no, I want to work more with the business owner or the people that have that side hustle, that passion project, that thing they want to grow. And, that's kind of what I've evolved into pretty quickly over about a year of that first year in business.
So do you think that people are, I mean, they seem to sabotage themselves, right? They don't do the
Mhm.
things that they can do. There's nothing that you and I can teach somebody that they can't just do on their own if they were conscious about it or whatever.
Right.
So what do you think holds them back? You think they're afraid of like getting out of their comfort zone and doing things? Are they and people say you're afraid of success. I don't know if I,
That can happen.
but it can happen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's usually it usually is a fear related behavior or a limiting belief kind of related
Yeah, that's the
behavior,
term, limiting belief.
that is holding most of us back. It's
Right.
that feeling of I'm not good enough, I'll never succeed at this. I talk about limiting beliefs in terms of what I call the 3 Ps, which is
Okay.
most of us have things that we think of as permanent, personal, and pervasive definitions. So
Right.
in other words, it's not I failed at something, it's I am a failure. That makes it
Right.
personal.
Meaning
It's
it's
not I
permanent.
failed at this one thing, it's I
Right.
fail at
I will
everything.
fail all the
That's
time.
pervasive. And
Right.
it's not even I just failed this one time, it's I always fail. Now it's
Right.
permanent.
Right.
And so you tend to kind of tell yourself these stories, and it could be about failure, it could be about success. Yeah, there are people that are actually afraid of success because they look at it as success means something's going to be different. I'm going to have to
Right.
change. I'm going to have to behave in a different way.
Maybe
I'm going to have to
can't hang
act
with
in a
my
different
friends
way.
anymore or whatever.
Yeah. I can't hang out with the same people. There's even folks that are like, everyone I know who has money
Yeah.
is a jerk. Well,
Right.
I don't want to be a jerk, so I'm
Right.
not going to have money. And it's like,
Right.
well, yeah, but that's not a cause and effect.
No, you can be a nice person and have money.
Yeah, trust me, I've known jerks that have no money, and I've known
Yeah,
jerks
a
that have a
lot.
lot of money.
Yeah, exactly. There's no causal relation. So then do you find that sometimes people are what's the word? Like it's like you said, they're like afraid of something happening that they've never experienced before.
Right.
And they think it's something that's going to continue to happen, as opposed to, I think if they had the attitude of, you know what, maybe I won't be so successful the first time, or maybe I'll trip up, or we will run into obstacles, then it's not so impactful when it happens.
Right. Like I like to reframe things a lot of times. And, again, this is going to show my science
Reframe's a good
background.
word, right?
I reframe things as experiments.
Yeah.
You're just running an experiment. Because
Yeah.
here's the thing, when you run an experiment, what you do is you get data.
Right.
You don't fail.
Right.
You don't succeed. You just get information.
Yeah, no, you're right. Look, if
You get
Edison
data.
wasn't doing experiments, we might not have a light bulb.
Right. Think about it. A lot of experiments, the end result of the experiments is that didn't work.
Right.
It's like,
A
okay.
lot of the results of the experiments are not what they expected or what they were shooting for.
In fact, some of the most famous, earth-shattering experiments ever that make all the books are the ones where it's like, oh, how did that happen? Kind of results.
Yeah.
So when for me at least, when I frame things as I'm just going to run an experiment, I'm going to get some data. All of a sudden, it's like, well, now the pressure's off. Because if I fail, it's like, well, yeah, I got data about something that didn't work.
Right.
Right. Now, does that mean that suddenly makes it easy that I could just go out and do anything I want? Absolutely not.
No,
I'm still human. I still have mindsets. I still have fears. I still have things that hold me back. But at the same time, it's part of that framing. And this is where often working with another mentor or coach or somebody that can come in from outside.
Therapist, right? It's the same thing.
It could be a counselor, could be a therapist, could just be your spouse sometimes, that can look at you and go,
that idea, but yeah.
Really? But it can be, in some relationships that works and others that doesn't. But it's that idea of bringing in an outside person so that you're not just on an island. This is why masterminds work so well. You get in with another group of business owners and they can look at you and go, really, dude?
Yeah. And one of our sponsors is the Alternative Board.
Yeah, that's the same sort of thing.
Type of stuff. Yeah.
You'll score for, a lot of small business, SBA, small business associations. They have score programs, which are usually these older, more experienced business owners who meet with newcomers. All of these are ways of availing yourself of the same basic idea, which is plugging into someone who's kind of outside of your mental forest.
Right.
Who can ask questions and make observations from outside of the forest.
No question about it.
And help you go, oh, wait a minute. Maybe that's not the way I thought it was.
I solve problems for a living. I'm much better at solving other people's problems than
Everyone
I am solving my own.
Everyone is.
And I'm good at solving my own problems. Most other people are, this is what I do for a living.
Well, it's like, I'm a full-time coach. I coach for a living. Guess what? I also have coaches, because
I know have coaches.
I can't coach myself nearly as well as someone else can coach me.
Right.
Just like, the same thing for me coming in for somebody else. I know I can help them in a way that they can't help themselves, just because it is that outside view coming in. And you're not, this is the thing, like with money, using that as an example, a lot of times people don't want to make certain money decisions because there's an emotional attachment to the money.
Right.
The money's just not numbers on a piece of paper. It means something. It means something about what I can do, or my worth, or my how good of a provider I am. All of these emotional things come along. And guess what? When I'm looking at your budget, I'm looking at numbers on a piece of paper. That I have no emotional attachment to those numbers whatsoever. It's kind of like being the CFO for a big company. They come in and go, write a $50,000 check. You go, all right.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother you a bit. You just write a check.
It's not coming out of my bank account.
It's not coming out of my bank account. I don't have any emotional attachment to this. So you kind of have that outsider view, and that can happen with time. That can happen with mindset. That can happen with money. That can happen with all of those. And, for me as a coach, some of it is the technical side, the practical side, giving new tools, giving new techniques, giving new things. But 80% of it is that internal mindset, accountability, belief systems, those sorts of things. That seems to be the areas that really moves the needle for folks.
Yeah. Now, where have you gotten your tools that you use with your customers?
So I've done,
Patients.
I don't know how many thousands of hours of training over the years. So, I've gone through several different coach training programs. I've gone through a lot of work. And then I'm actually part of an organization called Coach Connections, which is a whole bunch of coaches that work together. There's about 150, 200 of us. And again, that's a mastermind tool for me to plug in. So when I run into that situation, that's that oddball situation, I've also got, it's like, I'll get back to you next week on that. And I can go call 14 coaches, and odds are good 12 of them have run into this situation before. So even though it's brand new to me, I've got resources behind me. So it's not just the developing the skills and then actually being in practice. I've been doing this since 2011, so I've also got a lot of practice. And then, of course, as a teacher and honestly, even as a corporate leader, I did a lot of coaching. But it was coming back and then refining those by adding on additional training, and then plugging in with other coaches that are good at what they do, and learning from them has probably been honestly better than any course that I've ever taken. Is that, that masterminding and membershiping with other folks. We do office hours like 4 times a month where we just get on, and it's like, okay, anyone having a problem this week? All right. Now let's just tear into it and figure out what we're doing. And even if I'm not the one with the problem, the cool thing is I'm on there listening to, 12 or 13 other experts. By the end of it, we've got 17 ideas, and then you leave that going, okay, great. Now, if I run into that situation, I've already got tools in my toolbox.
Yeah. I think a lot of the people that kind of fall into coaching because of their success in business or whatever, I mean, I hope that they, get certified and do the training or whatever and educate themselves. But I'm not sure if that's the case. Sometimes
the vast majority of coaches don't.
Oh, I don't, I know this stuff. I teach this guy.
And a lot of coaches, you mentioned earlier coaching and consulting, and I'm going to make a distinguish between the two. And it's not even good or bad. This isn't a value judgment. It's just this, to me, this is the difference. A consultant comes in and it's like, you've got a specific problem and I have a specific solution to help you implement.
Right.
Well, like for instance, if you want to figure out how to run Facebook ads, hire a consultant.
Right.
You want somebody that knows how to do it, that comes in and goes, here's how you do it.
Right.
Where a coach is much more on the softer side of not one size fits all solutions, but rather here's tools in a toolbox. And for your specific situation, let's try these 3 tools.
Right.
Okay. Which one works best for you? Okay. That one. Okay. That's the one we're going to implement. And so it is more of an iterative or experiential kind of thing. And that's one of the problems I see is a lot of folks actually fall into coaching, or they call it coaching, but what they're really doing is consulting. And it's not that that's bad, because consulting is a good thing, but they're not really delivering the product that they say they're delivering. They're delivering something else. and that leads to confusion in people's mind, about which do I want. And
Right.
some of that is, I think, coaching is kind of a little sexy right now. It's kind of the word du jour,
Right.
at least right now. That
Yeah.
could change in a couple of years.
No, I always looked at it the same way. That consultants come in to deal with problems and issues in the company. I look at the coach like working directly with the person, right? Working with
Mhm.
the CEO, the executives, or the owner of the company to deal with their mindset or whatever you happen to be doing, not solving an operational problem
Not
or
usually doing
getting
operational
ready to
stuff, right?
scale and stuff like that. Yeah,
You know, I've
absolutely.
got knowledge in some of those areas, but 90% of the time, I'm like, what I'm doing is helping you figure out if that's really your problem. Okay, now how do you solve that problem? Not, I'm going to tell you how to solve it, but let's go figure out, do you need a consultant? Do you need a new piece of, what do you need? And then
Right,
you go get it,
right, right, right,
rather
right.
than me do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, what would you say? And then we can take a break
sure.
for the commercials. What would you say you see as like a common thread or common mistake that, I don't know, mistake's the right word, but that you see the people that you work with make?
So I think the biggest thing, and it falls right into the area that you're talking about when you talk about the accidental, entrepreneur,
Right,
is
right,
most people that go into business because they're good at a skill.
right.
They're
One,
good at the technician. They're good, I'm a good HVAC guy, so I'm going to start my own HVAC business, or I'm a good whatever. And they never stop and sit back and work on, the other two legs of the stool. Because when you think about business, there's the technical side, but then there's also a business side,
yeah, big time.
getting knowledge and skills about what does it mean to run into
Running a business,
business,
very
how do you
different.
look at a
Yeah,
P&L, what do numbers mean, all of
right,
that sort of stuff. And then there's the third leg, which is much more the soft side or the mental side or the mindset side, the plugging into other people's side. And that's sometimes helping you with the managing the people, and then
okay,
it's sometimes helping you with managing yourself. It's both of those fall into that kind of third leg of the school. And so a lot of folks they school themselves on the technical side.
right,
They maybe do a little bit on the business side, and then they leave out the soft side completely. And I
right.
think all three are vital to really having a sustainable business that lasts, for a long time.
Yeah, I think that sometimes there's a divide between the business side and the skill side, and
Yep.
sometimes maybe it shouldn't be the same person. You know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
everyone needs the soft side, but sometimes you can't take it to the next level of being a business. Maybe you can do it for a little
Right.
while, right? You're the HVAC guy. You know how to install units. You got connections. You're putting in, but to actually run the business and to figure out what I need and how I have to price this thing so I make money. It's not like I buy it for
Right.
$1,000 and I put it in for 1,500. Well, maybe it costs me more than $500 to operate.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Maybe you have
right?
overhead that adds up to
Yeah.
$1,800 should be
And
the
I think
pricing.
that
Yeah.
some businesses business owners hit a wall at some point. I mean, you
Hmm.
see it with large corporations, right? Where they throw the owner out, or they move them up to chairman of the board or whatever, and they bring in a real CEO who knows that, the way to run a business.
And there's a both and there. So as an
Yeah.
owner, first off, most small businesses don't ever grow past the size, they don't grow into the size of being the 500,
Right.
300
Of
employee
course.
size businesses. Most of them are 100 and less.
Right.
So at some point there's a scale factor of how much can you afford to offsize. But
Right.
the other factor is, even if you're the owner of the business, you've got to have a certain understanding of the business side. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you have to be the one actually doing it.
No, but you
And it
definitely
doesn't
have
mean
to
you have to
understand
do
it.
all the day in and day out,
Of
but
course.
you better know what your numbers are,
Well, obviously, right? Because then somebody's going to steal from you.
because otherwise you look up, yeah, exactly. You look up 6 years later and you're broke, but it's for a different reason,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know. And that's so. I've seen folks do that where they just completely abdicate any knowledge or
No, because
skill
they're
in
like,
that
I don't know
area.
finances. That's not for
I
me. They
don't
don't
need to
want to
do
touch
that part.
it. Right.
I got. It's always I got a guy. He takes
Right.
care of that. It's like no, 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 no.
Yeah.
And again, you don't have to be the master. Yes, absolutely, you can outsource a lot of that. You
Yeah.
can hire people. You can do all of that, but there's still a certain level to which you've got to have some level of skill in that just to be able to keep your eye on the ball and make sure nothing's going completely wrong.
Yeah. No, it's true. As entrepreneurs, we like to be creative types. Like musicians who don't audit their books. And we don't want to deal with the finances and the numbers.
Right.
And, some of that I think is from what you said before, and that is the reality of whether the business really works or not. Like, I think people
If
want
I
to
don't look at it, then I don't know.
Yes, correct. And they don't really look at it and say, you know what? We're not making money running this business. Like, just supporting our lifestyle. And I think a lot of people during pandemic had a lot of revelations when their cash flow stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized that they were not making any money. They were just, it was dollar in, dollar out. Their, next dollar comes in to cover yesterday's whatever. I mean, I have business owners that, like restaurateurs, that don't have a restaurant anymore. It's all takeout because they realized that they were making no money on the restaurant.
Right. The restaurant was really a loss leader for them.
Yeah.
It didn't do anything.
And a lot of headache and stuff like that. So I think that people shy away from, man, I don't know if you find this, the stuff they don't want to deal with. But if you want to be successful and you want to actually have a fulfilling life and feel that you have all those parts, spiritually or otherwise, you got to do the work. You got to do the tough stuff.
It's the comfort thing. I'm comfortable over here being the technician, so I'm just going to pay attention to that because that's comfortable. Well, guess what? If you don't get uncomfortable some of the time, you're never really going to have a great, successful business. Now, does that mean you suck it up and you do all of the stuff that you hate to do forever and ever? No, that's not what I'm saying.
Of course, you just got to know what's going on behind the other.
But you got to have some level of skill and understanding, because otherwise somebody ends up taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
Or even just because you're not paying attention to it, the situation changes. And 6-8 months go by and you don't even realize the situation has changed. And guess what? You're out of business. You haven't paid your payroll taxes for 8 months.
Oh my God.
Number of people I have that, I'm behind on taxes. Really? How'd that happen? They just took their eye off the ball.
I've had clients that, they owed $250,000 in sales tax.
Oh, absolutely.
How did that happen? It's not even your money.
Right.
You're collecting money from other people to send it to the government. You're not sending it in, so you're running your business. So who's
but
the guy
they mix it all into one big bucket, and so they lose track of what's going on, and pretty soon they're spending the money. I look at that with all taxes as, when you have taxes coming in, segment them off because it's not your money.
Absolutely. What was that guy in New York? Crazy Eddie. Do you remember Crazy Eddie?
Yeah.
Really easy to run a business when you keep the 18% tax you have to pay between state and federal, whatever.
Yeah. He was doing a whole bunch of stuff, but that's
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
If you look at the tip of the iceberg, but he didn't pay taxes. He socked away cash for decades, and then when he went public, he poured all that money back into the business and pretended like it was profit.
Yeah.
So that he got huge stock dividends and then sold all the stock, and exactly. It was rug pulls before crypto existed.
Right, exactly. But there's small things, I think, that people, like you said, they just don't pay attention to their house, and then next thing you know, they're a little trouble, and they're trying to fix it and they can't, and next thing you know, they're getting a knock on their door, or they're getting a letter from
and that's usually what it is. I mean, most people, Crazy Eddie was a crook. Most people aren't actually crooks. No, most people are just sloppy, for lack of a better word. Mixing personal and business. How many people do you know that are in small business, have been for several years, and still don't actually have a business account of any sort? They just have everything kind of mixed into one big bucket of money.
Right, which is a real dangerous way to operate your business. You end up in a lawsuit, hurt somebody, they just try and sue you, and you're in the middle of it. I've seen
everything, and now you're upside down, and you're in, you've lost not only your business, but you've lost your house, and everything else that goes along with it.
Yeah.
And it's not because, and they'll even tell you, I know I should separate this stuff, but they haven't done it.
The consequences of not doing it. That's, absolutely. I think that when people get in trouble, often they're small business owners and they're not used to paying their own taxes, right? They were a W-2.
They were W-2.
It was taken out. They filed their returns. They got money back. And now they're like, what do you mean I have to pay taxes at the end of the year? Because maybe this first year they've shown a profit. They didn't withhold any money and send it into the government. Right. And they get behind, and now they're paying catch up all the time.
And now they're trying to save for next year and pay last year. And, it's pretty quickly that can snowball against you.
Yeah.
And again, really, this is all kind of the technical business side of it. But what keeps a lot of people from doing that business side of it is because what we were talking about earlier, that accountability,
right?
And having somebody with you that's like, no, you can you can figure this out. This isn't
Right,
rocket
of course.
science. You know,
Yeah.
people have been doing this for
Right.
1,000 years. You know,
This is nothing. Right.
you know, because
So
that's the thing is the
you know?
business stuff sounds so intimidating and scary, and the real truth is it's not. It's
Right.
really basic logic and thinking. It's not really that hard, but it's because it's, you know, again, we don't
Unknown.
teach people. You
Right,
know,
it's
we
unknown.
just kind of
They're
throw them
just
in and go
afraid.
figure it out.
Right.
You know?
Like life, you have a baby and they throw you out of the hospital and they don't give you a book as you're leaving.
There's no instruction
If
manual
there's
with
a problem,
kids.
go to page 27. It'll tell you what to do. You know, we have a hotline in the back. You just call. It doesn't work that way. But you're right.
No.
A lot of it's the unknown and the first time. But that, you know, that's why we often fail our way to success. And we'll
Right.
take a break in a minute, but we can come back and talk about that because I think the reason we fail our way to success is because you learn more from failing. And then it's not so daunting the second, third, fourth time. You're like, I've been through this. I've survived.
Right.
It's not going to be that big of a deal. All right, let's take a commercial for our little sponsors. Then we'll come back in a minute. Here's a word from our sponsors. Looking to market and grow your business? Or perhaps you're just getting started and want to hit the ground running? AWeber is the best choice for online email marketing and automation of your business. From maintaining a subscriber list to drip campaigns and landing pages, AWeber gives you tools and integrations that make marketing easy and fun. As our partner and sponsor, we use all their tools to promote the podcast and market our law firm. AWeber, the best alternative for online marketing. For over 30 years, the Alternative Board, or TAB, has built a thriving community of forward-thinking CEOs and business owners who want to radically improve their companies. Through unique combinations of one-on-one business coaching, participation in monthly TAB board meetings with other non-competing owners, a suite of strategic tools and customized strategic planning workshops, TAB membership can deliver greater strength to your business and a better work-life balance for you and your family. All packaged in a streamlined and affordable service that the people at TAB invite you to try risk-free. Are you struggling with managing advertising due to a lack of time or expertise? Perhaps you're facing challenges in scaling ads for your store. Are you feeling lost when strategies have no success? GSM Growth Agency is your reliable partner in overcoming these business challenges. Feel the impact of collaborating with a team dedicated not only to short-term goals, but also to building long-term partnerships and achieving sustained success. Embark on an exciting journey to redefine the possibilities of e-commerce and create a legacy of unparalleled excellence. Take decisive action now. Follow their link in the show notes to receive a complimentary audit of your Shopify store conducted by a GSM expert. Propel your e-commerce game to new heights with GSM Growth Agency. Follow the link in the show notes to learn more about all of our sponsors. And now back to our show. All right, Scott. So we're back. So what were we talking about? We were talking about the mistakes.
Failing your way to success.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a lot of that is just, you know, before you failed the first time, it's like, oh, well, if I fail, it's going to destroy me.
Right. Well, obviously,
you know, I'm not going to survive. You know,
Yeah.
it's you've got the brain. Your brain is going. There's a lion in the bushes, and the lion's going to eat me. You know, and it's kind of like public speaking. You know, most people are afraid of public speaking.
Yeah.
Why? Well, because in their brain, if they get up there and do something embarrassing, the tribe, all the other people that are watching, are going to kick them out.
Right.
They're going to be ostracized.
Laugh
They're going to
at
be
'em,
thrown off the island.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, here's the truth. Have you ever been in an event where someone's speaking and the person like messes up or loses track of their notes or something, or, you know, drops their papers and, you know, has to reshuffle? You don't sit there and go, oh my Lord, I can't believe this idiot.
Well, you might be thinking, I'm glad I'm not up there.
Usually you're either, I'm glad it's not me, or you're like, oh, I feel so bad for him.
Right.
You know, I mean, you're usually on their side. But until you've experienced that and gotten to do something where you messed up and people came up afterwards and went, yeah, you did a great job. And you're going,
really?
I didn't?
No, they don't
screwed up, you know?
You have. Yeah, not
but
at all.
Once you've had those failures or those mistakes or those things like that and recognize, oh, wait, I can live through this.
Right.
You know, this isn't the end of the world. I can survive this.
Right.
Then you start getting a little bit more comfortable with the idea of, okay, failure isn't fatal. Right?
Yeah.
And I even tell people, like, that's actually, we think about, you know, before you're going to do something, it's like, okay, what is the worst thing that could happen?
Right.
And if the worst thing is truly like, okay, this could cause my
Yes.
business to fail.
Right.
All right. Well, then
Maybe
is
better.
that really what you want to do yet?
Right.
Or can we come up with a different way of testing this without going all in like that? Because going all in at the poker table is really good in a James Bond movie. It's not so great when you're doing that with your life.
Yes, I agree. It's funny because, and I'm all, an advocate for university education. My 3 kids are there. One's
Yep.
finishing, one's done, one's freshman, and whatever. And I think we do a lot of growing up. Short of going to the army, we go to college and whatever. But I think that some of these places are so intense. You're studying, you're up all night, you're doing this, and you're having a good time. But you get out in the real world, and you're like, oh, this isn't so hard. Like, I remember when I went to law school. So I went to Cornell undergrad, and I grew up in a small blue collar town. If we had 2 AP courses in my high school, I didn't take them. I don't know. So I got into Cornell, and I went there, and it was like they lit me on fire, in an alleyway for 4 years. I mean, it was intense. Everything graded on a curve. They would just throw everything at you. So when I got to law school, my friends were like, oh my God, this is difficult. I mean, it was so much work. And I go, isn't this the same as college was? They're like, no. Like, for them, they were going to the bars at Tuesday.
Right.
So, everything, you get this skewed view of the world, and then you come out and you're like, oh, that's not so bad. I was at a much higher level, and I survived that before.
Well, and I mean, it's why too, like a lot of kids that are the ultra high performers in high school,
Yeah.
get to college and all of a sudden are struggling because everyone there was a high performer, and so they're in a completely different population, completely different group. And again, like you said, I think a lot of times college, army, whatever it is, a lot of these things are about time. It's less. Sometimes it's less the actual knowledge. I have an MBA. I have 2 bachelor degrees. I have a lot of quote book several certificates. I mean, I've got all these certificates on the wall and stuff.
Yeah.
Truth is, all of that learning is valuable.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I would never take any of it away. I think it's all very valuable. But really and truly, until you get in there and start putting it into practice, and living it out, it's just knowledge, and it's not.
And a lot of it's just
implementation that's valuable.
A lot of it's a big thinking exercise. You get out in the world, and you can actually think like human being. And then when you leave college, these pressure cookers, and you're out in the world, scattered in the world, then you're in groups at different levels.
Right.
So you're at a company. There's people below you, people above you. It's just totally different. And
and so much of what makes you successful, again, business, corporate, whatever. It comes back to that, you have to have a certain level of technical knowledge,
but you got to learn.
But you also have to have some other abilities and skills and ability to get along with people and negotiate the politics. And, I hate to tell you this, there's politics always. I hate it. I think most of us do. Doesn't matter. It's a reality. So you better learn to deal with it and manage to get through those things. With some level of skill and ability. And I think that a lot of times can be something that holds people back. Again, business, corporate world doesn't.
Yeah.
It's funny as it is, it's different in some ways and it's totally not in others. People look at me and say, you were a school teacher. How does that prepare you for business? It's like, think about
a lot of stuff.
I'm managing administrative task. I'm managing people. I've got a room full of folks that do not want to be there, and I've got to get them engaged and active and learning. Does that sound like the management or leadership position in a corporate job?
Right.
It's the same sort of thing. So the skills, I think, a lot of times are more transferable than people recognize if you step back and abstract it and go, wait a minute, what am I actually learning how to do?
Yeah.
I'm learning how to negotiate and deal with people. Well, that applies everywhere.
Well, that's the thing. Like, when it comes to law, I'm practicing law. I've been practicing, 32 years. So taking the entrance exam, going to law school and studying, passing the bar, and practicing are almost like four
completely different things.
The base is the same, right? Your ability to think and reason and so forth. But I didn't learn how to practice law in law school.
No, you learn that after you pass the bar.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah.
certainly didn't learn that from taking the bar.
No.
You learn that from working with
In fact,
colleagues.
law school teaches you how to pass the bar.
Not really, a little
You
bit,
know?
and then you still have to take a course to learn how to pass
And
the
then
bar.
you still
which
take a
is ironic.
class.
Yeah, which is ironic to me, but
Right.
that should be what law school's all about, right? Teaching you how to pass the bar and practice law. But instead, it's this
Right.
this philosophical or exercise of and analyzing these cases and all. I guess for some people,
Teaching you how to think is what it's trying to
of
do.
course,
Not
because
saying it's
that's what
successful at it, but that's what it's trying to teach you to do.
correct, and
Yeah.
that's the whole point. I was more analytical after law school,
Yeah.
but I wasn't.
Well, but it's
now-
also why you look at like medical school, law school. Those are both great examples of. I actually think there's some people that wash out of law school, wash out of
and
medical
there's
school
a reason for that.
that would be fantastic lawyers and or fantastic doctors,
right, but you got to get.
but
over
they don't
the
have
whole-
that
Right.
fortitude, that ability to get through that system.
Right.
And again, is that good or is that bad? Well,
it's
yeah.
just some sort of,
You know?
I mean, certainly it's good on the medical side, right? If somebody can't get through that, do you want them doing brain surgery on you, or
but that's the thing is,
surgery?
some of what washes people out is just things like the ability to stay up late whenever you're a resident.
Yeah,
Well, but I don't want my brain surgeon staying up late. I want him well rested before he went. You know what I mean? That's not actually a
Well,
skill
that's true.
that's necessary for him to be a good brain surgeon.
Right.
So it's some of the skills that we're using to wash people out. Again, this applies to the business world as well. Unfortunately, we wash people out sometimes for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
And again, that's where plugging in, the tab that's your sponsor, the coaching, other mentors, that's where finding those other people is so successful, or I think can help you be successful, is because it can help you figure out what's actually the stuff that matters, and what's the stuff that technically we spend a lot of time and energy sometimes on paying attention to stuff in business that the real truth is it doesn't matter one iota, in terms of actually making you successful in business.
For whatever reason you're attracted to doing it, it's more fun.
Yeah, we waste a lot of time and energy on stuff that, at the end of the day, it's like, you're spending 4 hours a day doing that. Why?
Because we're bad. We're not obedient people. We're, and I know we got a little bit off the topic, but that's the one thing about business that's not true in medicine or law, certainly not in medicine, right? Not everybody can be successful and get through the hurdles that you have to jump through to become a lawyer, to become a doctor, whatever. But if you take the time and you talk to the right people, you being one of them, right? And I am a big advocate for having a mentor for your business, putting together a little bit of an advisory committee,
having an advisory team, absolutely,
on top of the coaching, things like that, because it does take a village, right? And you can be successful if you do the things that unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. It's not that they can't do it. I think there was some speech like from 1930 something where that was part of the speech, that successful people do the things that unsuccessful people are unwilling to do. And sometimes you do need a professional to say, hey, you can do this. It's not an insurmountable task. You just have to focus and do it. And there are
you
people
need to suck it up and do it.
Correct. There's some people have attention issues or whatever, but they still can have somebody to motivate them, to make them accountable to do that. And that's the theme of what we're talking about today, on top of the other people I've spoken to in your field. I'll use it loosely, but I'm not going to evaluate everybody, whether they fall within your specialty or not. But I think that's the thing. I think people who are listening, and this is why I started the podcast, right, is that we can be more successful than we are. We don't have to have
absolutely
incredible failure rate, right? What do they say? Inside of 5 years, like
85 to 90% of businesses fail.
Okay, and that doesn't account for the ones that are on and still struggling. Right. So
should have closed up doors, but are still manages to suck it up.
There are very few that live the dream of everything's going great, it's all working out, I got nothing going on, and there's always a sacrifice, right? So the business is going great, it's their family life, marriage, whatever.
But I'm divorced or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Or I'm an alcoholic, or I've had very successful friends in business, law, whatever. So stressed out, heart attack, 52, dead. So a lot of it is
finding that balance where you can actually have a life that you want and be successful in business. That's tough, and it is.
Right.
But you're right. A lot of it is doing the stuff that really, truthfully, people could do, but they choose not to. and because they choose not to, they don't have that success. I mean, I work with a lot of folks in construction industry and those sorts of things, and it sounds silly, but it's like, show up on time,
Right.
clean up after yourself,
Right.
and be polite. You're ahead of like 98% of construction
least.
people.
Definitely.
It's like, just do those three things.
Right. Doesn't matter where you live. That's what they do. They don't show up on time. They make a mess, and
They don't clean up, and they're generally rude and not pleasant to be around.
It's the same way.
It's like, just do those three things, and you're ahead of like 98% of your competitors.
Yeah.
And instead of being the chasing the low ball, and honestly, because every construction guy will tell you, oh, I can't bid higher than that because I won't get the job. It's like, yeah, but you know what? If you have a reputation for doing those three things, people will pay you more.
Of course.
Right. It's like, huh?
And I think psychologically, you think you don't deserve it. I have attorneys too. They're like, well, I charge whatever per hour. I'm like, I haven't charged that for 10 years. Yeah, but you know what? I feel uncomfortable raising the rate. And, I said, yeah, but you have 20 or 30 years experience. You should your family should suffer.
Right.
And then they raised, I felt, my clients were like, how come you haven't raised it before?
Right. Yeah.
And they felt good once they did it. Now, what, I know we're talking about all the bad things, but what what are the things, like the characteristics that you see in people? Because I've interviewed I'm pushing on 400 people. I've been doing this 32 years, working with business owners. I can tell when I start talking to somebody whether they're going to be successful or whether they have been successful in business. So I was wondering what your take on that is, about characteristics you see in successful people.
So one of it is actually having a clear definition and understanding of what the heck they want.
Right.
I think so many people start business and have never actually sat down and defined what they want their business to be.
Right.
What am I wanting after? What am I after?
Right.
How much do I want to make? What kind of time freedom do I want to have? All of that sort of
planning
stuff.
and goal setting.
And goal setting, business planning. You give it a lot of different names, but I call it designing your business. Literally just sitting down and putting a scaffold in place.
Right.
And guess what? It's going to change, and you're not going to end up with exactly what you set down and design.
Ever.
But that's not the point.
No.
Because the point is, if you have no plan,
right,
you have nowhere to go. You don't have a filter, and so that's one. I think another is just that ability to be consistent.
Yeah.
It's kind of the thing of what you were talking about, of do the things that need to be done, and just you get up in the morning and it's time to make the donuts.
Stick-to-itiveness.
Stickiness. Yeah.
Right.
It's consistency, stick-to-itiveness, whatever name you want to give it. It's just that ability to figure out what needs to be done and to just kind of go do it. Motivation, whatever, having a why, having a reason to do it that's big enough to keep you doing it. And again, that's connected back to that figuring out what it is that you actually want, because I can put up with some pretty nasty stuff if I got a good enough reason to put up with.
Yeah.
And so some of that, and then I think the other piece, and I kind of alluded to it earlier, is somebody who has that idea of, I've got to be learning, I've got to be growing, I've got to be expanding, and not just in one area, but in that technical,
holistically,
soft, and business side. And again, it doesn't mean you have to be a master of all of them. That's not the point. And it doesn't mean you have to be the guy that's typing numbers into a spreadsheet. But you've got to have some level of understanding of that if you're going to be a business owner in today's world, and it all have it stick. And that's be that lifelong learner kind of mindset.
Yeah, and I think there's a bit of muscle memory that goes along with that. I think as people do the right things as opposed to the wrong things, and they get in the habits of doing it,
it's easier. Yeah,
it gets much easier. It's not as daunting. It becomes natural. That's what I've always done.
Willpower gets you started, but what keeps you doing it is building systems and processes and habits and mindset, and that. Again, if you get up every day, and it's always funny because I find people a lot of times will have one area of their life where they do that, but then they don't apply it to other areas of their life. So it'll be that person that's like, they're a gym rat, right? They're in the gym 4 days a week, like clockwork, forever, and they've done that for decades.
Right.
But then they don't show up in other components of their life with that same sort of dedication. It's like, well, why is that? And usually it's because they haven't connected that kind of habit, that kind of mindset. They haven't plugged that into, why am I actually doing this? And they
Right.
haven't developed that drive. Because again, willpower will get you started. It won't
Yeah.
get you can't do it with willpower forever.
Right.
And eventually you're going to eat that chocolate cake, even though you're on the diet.
It's like when you take really good care of your customers and customer service, and you get good feedback and they like you, and then you don't do the same thing with your spouse.
Right.
Like, why would you
Why would you do it here and not
if
and
it
expect
works
something
here,
different?
being a good, right? I've been
Right.
in seminars where they did role playing, and they're like, why are you acting that way? Well, because they're my customer, not my wife. Like,
Mhm.
what disconnect are you missing?
And yet it's a disconnect, or customer versus employee.
Yeah,
That's the
big
same
time.
thing. I've seen
Big time.
people completely ruin the way they treat their employee. They'll nickel and dime their employee
Right. Terrible environment. People don't
and
like
create
working.
a terrible environment, and then they're like, why are they always so rude to the customer? It's like, well, dude.
They're pissed off all the time.
You
I
know?
know a couple of recruiters basically that work for companies and make the company brand themselves for employees first. They said, listen, if we're going to attract the right people, you have to brand the company for the employee. We're already branded for the customer
But
and
you
the
got to, yeah.
client. You got to be branded because people are looking for stuff.
And the key is, though, you actually have to follow through on it.
Yes,
Because
you have to do
that's
those
the
things.
problem. Is a lot of companies out there will talk about, oh, we're employee centric,
Right.
and then you go talk to the employees and they're like,
No.
yeah,
Right.
they give us a pizza party once a year. That is not
the thing,
employee
like,
centric.
that's a big disconnect, right? Because the management has a perception that they're doing the right thing, and the
Yeah.
workers are like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Because the stuff that really matters to people, and again, whether this is your customers, whether this is your employees, the same thing.
Right, it doesn't matter.
It a lot of times the thing that we think matters to them
Yeah.
isn't the thing that matters.
Right.
Again, back to those construction people that are like, oh, what matters is I'm delivering the lowest price. If you show up on time and you clean after
They will
yourself
pay
and you're polite and you do a good job, I'll pay you more money and not complain one bit.
Right.
I will write that check all day long and be happy to write it.
Right.
And yet they've got this disconnect that, no, all that matters to people is the lowest common denominator. And it's like, not necessarily. Yes, there are some people that are actually just looking at the bottom line.
Right.
But that doesn't have to be your client. You can be okay letting them go.
Yeah, we don't need those.
And go get these others.
Yeah, ideal client profiles.
Yeah, and so it's all of that stuff. It's which again, none of that. What did I just mention? Consistency. None of these things are. This is not rocket science.
No. No.
But it's easy to understand. It's hard to actually implement. It's
for sure. And it's
easy
to fall into the trap of, I know what my customers want. I
Oh,
know
yeah.
why they buy our products and services.
and then you've never
You and I
asked them.
both know 99% of the time you're wrong.
Yeah.
Just like your employees, you think you're doing all the great things for them. And, and that the best companies that I've worked with and clients constantly ask, are sure that whatever they believe is wrong. So they're constantly asking their
Right.
their buyers, right? Because even if they know what they want now, they also know
It's probably going to change.
Of course. And they're always asking. But that's a handful of people. It's not a big group that I've met who do that right.
No. Well, let's face it, within most companies, whoever's listening right now, if I send a survey out to all the employees and say it's an anonymous survey,
right, nobody will ever know who you are.
Most surveys, most people do not believe that it's an anonymous survey.
You still will be like, there's some way this is being coded.
And you know what? They might even be right.
Yeah, there's no way to know. But that's a trust issue, right? That's an issue of communicating with your employees and making them trust you because you've delivered what you said you were going to do.
Well, if you've actually taught them that whenever they speak up, they get retaliated against in some way, shape, or form,
they're never going to trust you.
Why would they trust you? I wouldn't trust you.
It's worth the risk. Maybe it is anonymous, but what do I care?
It's not worth the risk. What's in it for me?
Right.
So we create those environments. And again, I know, we kind of talk about the corporate world and as opposed to quote the small business world, it doesn't matter. It's all the same. It's if you got people involved, and guess what? If you're in business, you've got people involved because you've got clients, customers, employees, somewhere, somehow, there are people involved in this. There has to be. by definition. So the minute you've got people involved, you've got all of these things. You've got trust, you've got mindset, you've got belief, you've got all of those things going on. And whether it's in you as an individual and you're having to deal with your own stuff, whether it's with your client, your customer, your employee, all of that, it gets complicated pretty quick because of all the people stuff,
Yeah. And you know what? It's more important with the small business, right?
Absolutely.
Because leadership matters more. How you deal with people more, because they don't have to stick around. Somebody's got a job, works with a company. They might think twice, put up with a lot of stuff before they're going to get uncomfortable enough to move and change and have to drive to a new place and meet new employees and find a place to have lunch and all those types of things. If they're just a vendor or a customer or whatever, they can move on pretty quickly, especially nowadays.
Well, and in small business, your depth of field is shorter. Go back to that HVAC guy. You got 3 techs working for you. One of them quits. You lost a third of your workforce.
Yeah. Exactly. 2 of them decide to start their own business, and you got a much bigger problem.
Where if you're part of some multi-franchise, multi-location,
right?
You got 90 guys working for you. One guy quits.
Not a big deal.
Not that big of a deal. We'll make up for it. We'll hire somebody else. It's good. We're all good. So it's you've got a lot of times when you're that small.
Not a lot of room.
One customer makes a difference. One employee makes a difference. It moves the needle a lot faster.
Well, Scott, I can't thank you enough for spending the afternoon talking to me about all this stuff. It's always good making more content like this, sharing ideas, because it reiterates the things that other people hear in other discussions. That there is a constant theme of the things that people do wrong and can do right. So I can't thank you enough on a Friday afternoon. I guess it's 4:00 where I am. You're a little bit earlier there. What? It's 2:00 there?
2:00 here. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enjoy the weekend. I don't know what it's going to be like there. It's going to be freezing as hell.
It's going to be cold here too. Yeah, I've already wrapped the faucets and got to cover the plants in a couple of days.
All right. So what's the best way people want to connect with you and learn from you and see what's going on in your world?
Absolutely. So I actually put together a page just for your listeners.
It'll be in the show notes too.
So if you go over to my website at inspiredstewardship.com and then just /TAE for the accidental entrepreneur and put that in, it'll take you to a page. It's got a way to get a hold of me. It's got some information about my book, my podcast, things like that folks can certainly check out as well. I've been podcasting for a while too. So I've got a few episodes out there that folks may want to tune into.
Great.
And then all of that information is there at inspiredstewardship.com /TAE.
Okay. I appreciate it. We'll put that in the show notes. So hang out. We'll roll the credits.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Accidental Entrepreneur. Opening and closing music written and performed by Howie Moskovich and made to order music. For information about Howie and his music services, please follow the link in our show notes. If you like the podcast, please tell others about us. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, on Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and most of the other podcast directories. If you like what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review and feel free to share our episodes on social media. If you have any questions or comments, ideas for the show, or you'd even like to appear as a guest, reach out to us by email at info@beinhackerlaw.com.
The Accidental Entrepreneur is hosted by Mitch Beinhacker and produced by Beinhacker Law. If you'd like to learn more about our business and legal services, you can find us on social media or visit our website at beinhackerlaw.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to subscribe to our feed to be notified of all future episodes.